Salam, this is the best bit. Everyone in the future agrees that this is the best bit. I can't really explain to the people right now why this is the best bit. So bear with me. Once upon a time, there was a kindly, very, very, very eloquent, gentle scientist. His name was Abraham Robinson. He lived in time of war and he lived in time of peace. And in time of peace, he designed aeroplanes. He didn't make any of them. He wrote them down in his book. He designed them so meticulously and so elegantly thought out that he could tell the difference between which planes would fly and which ones wouldn't. And he would compare them using a sense which is beyond what has been written in calculus, but an innate sense then learned of how that world described by calculus works. And so, independently, having learned Newtonian calculus, Leibnizian calculus, and this is based on analysis from a long, long time before, which has been actually neglected in the Western canon of how much analysis was already done, basically, before Leibniz and Newton. And what these have provided is a language and focal points and much, much beyond, as both of them would happily admit, transmitting what has been read before. Emili Patti from Akara Beskaria, and the Yajr Dita has like the basis of infinity coming into maths. It wasn't ever necessary, and there was this great time where there was like the Muslims in conversation with Jains, and then it's Muslims, Christians, and Jews in conversation with Jains, two separate cultures, both learning parallel to each other and having a conversation about maths. The Jains, they had 5 different kinds of infinity and a zero, and every time they told the Muslims something, the Muslims would go, "Oh, that's really interesting," and they just didn't believe in infinity or zero. It didn't match up to their theology. So they would get a brand new theorem out of it straight away. And then they would figure out something with their theorem, and it would be a consequence of that. They would tell it back to the Jains, and lo and behold, the Jains who are working with their 5 different kinds of infinity immediately got a new theorem for themselves back that was the Muslims' one where you tack on zero and infinity. And their rules about infinity were consistent enough that they needed when they were asking many questions, but not consistent enough that they are consistent. They break. Salam Western Academy. Your mathematics is broken. If you cut out zero and infinity from your mathematics, you'll finish your sums a lot quicker, and then you can just plug them back on at the end if you want, but it doesn't describe anything. Infinity was first invoked in this universe in the Rig Veda, and it was as close to falsehood as you could really get. The idea that, well, it is this statement: infinity is that which you can add to it or you can detract from it, and it stays the same. Now, adding and subtracting if they have happened, they have to have had an effect. It's analytically true, and we're speaking of analysis. But it led to a lot of interesting discussion, and just because there was basically a false line of mathematics, but it was the truth inside the falsehood, and that was most of the mathematics. Like the Greek mathematics comes via the Jains again, so we're talking in separate millennia, but the Pythagoras, he is a Jain, nothing but a Jain. He died a Jain death. Pythagoras, like me, one who works with waves and mathematics and monism and perfect. Pythagoras didn't get involved in infinity, and Greeks didn't get involved in infinity. Some people say that Euclid's proof of the inextinguishability of primes is infinitistic in its design. No, it wasn't. It was explicitly not referring to any infinite sets in Euclid's proof, of Euclid's proof of and there are several proofs of Euclid's proof at this point, effectively. Effectively means everything that we say affects what we're talking about. So just say effectively quite a lot and remember that. I mean it in a kind of reserved sense when I say it. I'm going to teach effective theory. That's what it's called, and it's about that. It's got learning, cognition, memetics, and all the physics in it. And I still didn't get to the best bit. Yeah. Whoa. Abraham Robinson designed planes. He got so good at calculus and then drawing the calculus into planes and imagining how they're going to fly that he went beyond the calculus that had ever been done before. And he wrote non-standard analysis, which is not the same world described as the infinitistic calculus, but the real world described, where you've got independent planes of scale, basically, and his infinite quantities are the hyperreal numbers, the hyperfinite numbers, which they're like infinity plus 1 and infinity plus 2. Great. As soon as you're doing infinity plus 1 and infinity plus 2, you're working with stuff that behaves properly. Mathematics. Set theory doesn't. Set theory, at the top and the bottom, it's in shreds from what I've done, basically. If you were doing set theory, there's so much other work to do. If you were doing set theory, just like upgrade to model theory. And someone described the shape of Cancer because that is the grammar of our DNA journey described, as in that's how our 4 letters in 2 streams, O sequencers, develop into shape in human form. So if you were doing set theory, go up, just read model theory. Someone be the first to describe the shape of Cancer. That's the same as describing the grammar of our genetic code. So that we can, with an invention I've designed, rearrange individual genetic letters once we know how to spell, and then we can spell wings or testes for females who want testes. We're flying then. We write ourselves how we want. The Darwinist phase is over. That was a small segment of history, and that's over. We're in charge now of where we go, so all the schools are abolished. Please.